Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. We can't know the future. If you can tell me what's going to happen in 5 seconds, 5 hours, 5 minutes from now, I really want to talk to you. We got to get you on here. Nobody can do that. And when it comes to planning an event, specifically a wedding, you never know what's going to happen. Stuff can come up, but you want to minimize the risk. And in doing that, you hire somebody to plan your wedding effectively. Got her right over here. We're going to talk about those things, those wild cards that come up, the chances of things that could happen during your wedding. What are those things? You might be surprised to hear some of these. And she's Kiersten Tharp. Her company is Great Days Event Planning. And I don't even know how she had time to hook up with us today because this is busy season for her.
Yes.
Welcome. How's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well. Very well. It's good to have you back here. And I know where you are in Georgia, it can get pretty hot in the summertime. So a lot of times people don't want to do weddings. So let's go to the fall where it's not too cold. I'm curious because here in New York, it is 72 degrees and sunny in almost the middle of November. Just delightful. What's going on down there?
It's actually about the same, which is really, really fantastic. For about the majority of October, it didn't rain, which was fabulous. So just about every single way, I had 3 weddings in October. So it was like one every week, just about every weekend. I only had one weekend where I had a break. But every single one of those weekends, it was like gorgeous wedding and absolutely picturesque, and it could not have been better.
Wow.
Wonderful. Now it's a little bit wet outside. And so we'll see how the next, I have 3 weddings in November too. So I just had one this past weekend, and another couple more coming up, and then one in December. So
we're still in, I don't know if you call it a drought situation up here, but it has made a difference. I can't remember the last time it rained, maybe a 5-second spritz, but everybody shut off their sprinklers and all the grass has died. It's like this, it's all brown. I'm looking out your window. You still have leaves on your trees?
I do.
What?
I know, right? It's wild. What now outside, like they're starting to like turn orange and red, which like it's again a 50-50 shot of that happening down here. Like it could actually be like beautiful and very fall and a whole bunch of colors outside, or it could just be like green and then everything falls to the ground. So
I don't think October a couple of years ago I went to Georgia, but that was in November, and I didn't know the leaves could stay on the trees that long. I mean, here they've changed color. Either they're down or they're still on the trees, but they're brown or a little bit of red.
Yeah.
You said 50-50 chance of that happening. 50-50 chance of something happening. I don't want to say go wrong, but happening during your wedding.
Yes. It's funny that we were starting to talk about the weather, because that's honestly the biggest wild card, especially if you're getting married outside, because you don't know what the weather is going to be like in a year. Nobody does. And you won't know a few weeks beforehand. You may not even know a few days beforehand. So what I always tell my brides is, obviously start looking at the weather a week out and look at it throughout the week. And there are some brides who are like, I just can't do it. Like it stresses me out. And I'm like, okay, I will look, it's okay. But again, most brides down here get married outside. So I'm like, a week, like if within a few days, I'm like, okay, we got to talk about the rain plan. It's kind of just what we have to do. And fortunately, I have a company down here out of Tyrone who is phenomenal with like providing giant tents. And they get all those calls all the time. Hey, I'm getting married in a few days and it's supposed to rain. Can you please help me? Done. So that's something that you really, really have to think about, and you have to really move things around too. Because there you could have like your ceremony spot where you can't have a tent. So you might have to move that and completely rearrange it all. So having those plan Bs is super important to have in place. And it's something that can really stress out a lot of brides and moms. And you just don't know where to go without that plan B.
It is a lot of stress because you don't know until the last minute, and you can't do anything about it. You can't change the weather. The only thing you can do is be prepared for something,
Yeah,
whatever it might be.
it's so true. A few months ago, I had a wedding, and it was all outside. It was at her mom's house, had her parents' house, and they had a ceremony in the backyard. It was beautiful. There was nothing in the forecast. The day before, the whole week prior, nothing. Even the day, even the morning up, there was nothing in the forecast. And and then she had cocktail hour and dinner all outside. It was beautiful. Once they were doing the first dance, I looked up and I saw this giant black cloud coming towards us, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I looked at my phone. It was saying like, it was almost like a huge tropical storm was on its way. And I'm like, this was not in the radar whatsoever. So like I had, and of course the DJ was outside, the bartender was outside, the photo booth was outside. Like, I was like, okay. And of course there were like 100 guests outside. And I'm like, okay, I got to rally everybody up. I've probably got like maybe 15 minutes to move everybody inside. We're just gonna have a giant house party. And they loved, like, the bride and groom were thrilled.
Wow. I'm getting anxiety just hearing about it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like, it's 100 people. They're not gonna listen to you when they say like, "Hey, it's gonna rain here really soon. You need to get inside." And they're like, "Okay, yeah," and then they just keep talking. And
Right.
it's like, we need to get inside
Yeah.
right now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. You don't want to believe it.
Yeah,
And because look at, we pilot based on our past experiences. So how many times has the weather people been wrong?
it's true.
So it's one time, it's not gonna rain.
Yeah, it's not gonna rain. And then
Yeah.
they see like a giant lightning bolt that's really close, and they're like, "Oh, we should probably go inside." Yes, you really, really need to get inside.
To that point, and it's kind of freaky, but there was a soccer match, maybe Buenos Aires. I'm not 100% sure. It just happened. Sad. Um, there was a storm coming. They were leaving the field. They already knew, like, we gotta get out of here. That's not good.
Yeah.
Lightning struck, and I saw the video. And this just illustrates when listen to to the radar. It struck one of the players, and yeah, and because it's so powerful, you see all of them fall over at the same time,
Oh
like
my gosh.
strike, and they all, like, I think like 10 players just fall down. Some of them quickly got up. The one did not make it because it was a direct hit.
Yeah.
But
Oh my
there's
gosh.
just more credence into what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you see that it's going to be raining, and especially since like there's DJ equipment outside and you're right
Oh,
next to it, you should probably go inside
yeah,
and move.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so weather, one of those things.
Weather's
Maybe
probably the biggest one.
I,
Another big one is when you have little kids involved in the ceremony. There are quite a few brides in today's society. There are brides who already have kids. Right now I have a bride who's getting married next Saturday who has a 1-year old, and she's the flower girl. And you don't know how that's gonna go. Um, I mean, you can take precautions, you don't know if she's going to be able to walk down the aisle by herself. You don't know if she's going to be crying the whole time. You don't know if she's going to even go, So I once had, back in May, I had a wedding where it was actually a vow renewal. Their youngest daughter, I think she was like 2. Um, she fell asleep. She took her nap right when they were about to go down the ceremony, right when they were about to go down the aisle. And they were like, "We don't want to wake her up. Like, this is," you know. So the groom was just like, "Just give her to me. I'll carry her going down the aisle." So like
yeah.
that kind of stuff, like you can't. And it was beautiful. Oh my gosh, it was so so sweet. So
I
that
say,
kind of,
I was thinking the same thing, and I was wondering, as a parent, how I would handle that, either holding their hand as you go down together.
yeah.
But that just elevated it. And, at that age, you can wake them up. Usually they're cranky before and after. You need to get a little bit of time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Oh yeah, I have a
Yeah.
3-year old, so I was like, I completely empathize right now. Let's just not wake her up, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's those kind of things that you just kind of have to play by ear as much as possible. But that's also where the rehearsal comes into play,
Mm.
because then you can kind of gauge how it might go. I had a wedding last weekend there was an 8-month-old part of the wedding. And he was being dragged, not dragged, but he was being wheeled down in a wagon. And because it was outside, and right before he got in the wagon, he was bursting into tears. Like it was, I could tell the dad was like trying to calm him, and I'm like, it's okay. Like even if the baby is crying all the way down the aisle, it's still going to be super cute.
Sure.
It really like that's just how it goes. But the moment he set him in the wagon, he was good. So like you just don't
Wow.
know. You just don't know. So that's a major 50-50 chance of something.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's not much you can do to
Yeah.
prepare for it, but
Yeah.
again, like you gotta do as much as you can.
And like you said, anything it goes because it's a small child. I would think unless it's a full blown tantrum where they just walk down the runner and then drop and just and but you never know. I was at a wedding 3 weeks ago, and I think the flower girl was, I want to say four-ish, somewhere there. And it
Mhm.
was super cute. Like we didn't even know it was happening. And she was like lightning. She went down. Here I am, everybody. Done. But that made it cute.
Right.
She ran.
Right.
Finished. And it was just like, what just happened? But wow,
Yeah.
that was adorable. It was, and I still remember it. I still
Yeah.
remember it. Mm,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
cool.
And the other one is along that line is if you have an animal who's part of the wedding.
Ooh.
If you have because I've had a few weddings where I've had a dog be part of the wedding. Just the wedding I had this past weekend, they also had their 3 dogs part of the wedding. And like each one was being escorted by one of their siblings. So it was really cool. And it was all outside but it was at like this outside pavilion, and it was super beautiful, like in front of a lake, and the weather was beautiful, like it was gorgeous. But for a dog, this is new smells. There are potentially squirrels and maybe even deer running around. Like you don't know what's going to happen. They might go, you know,
Mm.
they might go crazy.
I feel better about the dog than I do about the little kid. Like I
At
really do.
least they
I
can be on a leash.
Yeah, you have a leash. You are correct. And you can always motivate with food. You know, the dog
Oh
maybe
yeah.
knows at the end that they're getting a treat, or you could be
Mhm.
holding it or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I didn't even think about animals being
Yeah.
introduced into.
Oh
Mm,
yeah, for sure. I mean, they are people's babies,
sure.
so of course you want them to be part of the ceremony. Um, but that's the kind of thing you really have to think about. And again, that's where the rehearsal comes into play, because whenever there's an animal involved, I'm like, you have to bring your dog. You have to. Even if it's just like there's no bridal party and it's just the bride, the groom, parents, and a dog, I still need the dog there, 100%, because you don't know if they're going to react a certain way to a certain smell. You just don't know what they're going
Mm,
to do.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a 50-50.
Yeah, a
Uh,
100%.
what
Yeah,
else?
and I've had, I mean, the majority of the dogs that I've had in weddings have been really good, except for one. Like she was just like, I want to go, I want to go. Like it was just like, okay, I'm so glad she's on the leash. I'm so glad that you are handling her, because I would be mauled right now.
I just feel that you usually have a pretty good idea of how the dog's going to react. For most, there are some a little bit crazy, so you're
Yes.
taking that chance. But like I think of my dog, and I don't get him out a lot, so I should more, and I admit it. I want to take him to a brewery. Never done that before. I know there's other dogs there. Fortunately, at a wedding, there's not going to be other dogs. But to your point, they could see one. Anything could have bird, whatever. But for the most part, you kind of know what you're going to get. Kind of
Mhm.
know. Yeah. With a small child, I think that's the wild card.
That is a huge, like you just don't know. That
Yeah.
is a massive,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
Hmm.
sure, for
So what
sure.
else? What else is on your radar of those things that?
Um, So I've encountered one thing that I've seen quite a few times, not a lot, not as much as I was expecting, honestly, is having some major drunks at the end of the night. You
Ooh,
don't
yeah.
know what they're gonna do. You don't know what kind of drunk they're gonna be.
Mm,
I once had one of my very first weddings. I had a really hammered father, and he was doing his speech, and I'm like, I'm like basically standing right next to him, like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what he's gonna say. So that's definitely one, like, you really have to monitor that kind of person. And a way to prepare for that is to kind of gauge who, especially in the bridal party, who in the bridal party can like manage this person.
Mm.
And who's like close to them and who can be like, hey, let's go do this, to kind of take their mind off of whatever craziness they're getting into. And you
Ooh,
definitely want to keep the bride and the groom away from that.
wow.
Yeah.
And there's two scenarios here. There's the people that are going to perform, i.e., give a speech. Then
Mm-hmm.
you have just the random people that could just, Uncle Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an emotional time.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the alcohol, the emotions come up.
Mm-hmm.
They may be burying their emotions by drinking,
Mm-hmm.
or just things come up. And so I remember the time. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Whoa. You
Yes.
can't even plan,
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
yeah, yeah.
100%. I had a few weeks ago, I had a wedding and I was cleaning up inside where the cocktail hour was, and and everyone was dancing outside. Maybe about an hour later, I come outside, the bride is trash. And I'm like, how do I handle this? Oh my gosh, how do I handle this? So like, and I do what I always do, like just about every single couple, they're drinking at the end of the night. It's fine, that's great, having a good time as long as you're responsible. But I'm constantly giving the bride water throughout the evening,
Mm,
and it was one of those times where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be extra H2O tonight. And so like I would constantly take her drink out of her hand and hand her a cup of water. And at one point she was like, wait, my drink. And I'm like, I got it. It's safe. Drink that first. And she'd take a sip and I'm like, nope, you gotta drink it all. So like
totally.
that kind of thing, you kind of have to manage a little bit extra carefully.
We would be heroes in every situation if we could develop a sober pill. Just
Oh
here, take this now. you
my
know,
gosh.
bring them back.
Oh, we'd be rich, that's for
I
sure.
know. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Anything else that you're mindful of in planning?
I would also say, if you don't have a planner or at least a coordinator, I would say everything is 50-50. So
True.
because a planner is very much aware of what can go wrong, and they're already very much aware of how to prepare for those things that could potentially go wrong. If you don't have a planner, or at least a day of coordinator, you don't know. You don't know what could go wrong. You don't know the things that need to happen. Um, I had a wedding a month ago, and they decided, well, they hired me within 30 days of getting married
Wow.
as their planner, because she was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see where you're at, and we'll figure this out. They had booked a restaurant for food. Okay, great. The wedding was maybe like 2 minutes from my house, which was fabulous. It was at their own house. But then I'm in Fayetteville, which is south of Atlanta. They had ordered the food from a Vietnamese restaurant north of Atlanta, so about an hour and 20 minutes away. And which in itself that's in itself a little scary. Um, the restaurant was not delivering it. They weren't catering. They weren't doing anything. They were just providing the food. And without, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like without me, like it could have really gone wrong. So like you need to have somebody in place who can see the issues and kind of make it kind of go away, or at least be seamless without the bride knowing anything. Um, so yeah,
Hmm.
I would say anything could potentially go wrong
You know
without a
what?
planner.
100%. When you think
Yeah.
about it, you're spending all this money on the wedding. Why would you take a chance? And I look at it this way. It's a production. There's a
Mhm.
production going on
Yeah.
in many different aspects. If you go to a Broadway play, or bands playing.
Mhm.
There's one thing they're playing. There's some lights, there's some sound, yeah, whatever. In a wedding, you've got many different things going on. So at those productions, the play, whatever, there's a producer
Mhm.
that does
Yeah.
all this stuff. You need a producer at your wedding, i.e., a planner. I
Yep.
can't even see how anybody would even take a chance.
Yeah. 100%. I've had multiple other vendors, especially DJs and photographers, who have said that when they're hired, they always ask, do you have a planner or a coordinator or somebody? Because if they don't, it goes on their shoulders. And they are not a planner. They are
Mm,
not a coordinator. They are
mm,
there, the DJ is there to play the music, to MC, to handle
right.
that aspect of it. The
Sure.
photographer is there to capture the day. They're not there to, wrangle cats, like they're there to do their certain job.
Wow.
And it just gets so stressful, extra
Wow.
stressful for them. Which and that energy can be moved to every single person there. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
100% agree.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, the energy, because, if there's stress over here, the stress is going to go elsewhere,
Yeah.
and that's going to get in the way of this celebration. And you can't rely on the, call it the maitre d' of the venue,
Mhm.
to be the one to take care of everything. Yeah, they can do a little bit here and there, but in terms of logistics, when the food comes out, etc. But when something goes wrong and who can do this right now? You know what? I'm rethinking this. If I were a DJ playing a wedding or the photographer, I might not do it unless there was a planner.
Yeah. I had one DJ tell me that. And he was like, I'm never doing it again.
Yeah.
I will always do it if there's a planner, but if there is not a planner or at least a coordinator, I'm not doing it.
And I used to do wedding shows back in the day. And, I'd be the MC at the wedding show. And I know a lot of DJs that do weddings. And if they're not playing at a venue that they're familiar with, so they know the maitre d', and they know this person, they know that person, so there's some familiarity. If they're going to a venue that they've never been to without a wedding planner, it's like it's a free for all.
Yeah.
It's a free for all. Wow.
Yep.
Uh,
It's true.
best point ever right there. Like, seriously. And I'm not saying this just because you do what you do,
Yeah.
Kiersten, but I never thought of it that way. And the money that's on the line here for just a few hours, you want to maximize. You want to get the best out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why take a chance? Um,
Absolutely. Your day can be the most disastrous day ever, and which in turn will be the most stressful, and you would look back and hate every minute of it. Or it
yeah.
would be the best day of your life and the day that you've dreamt of your entire life come to reality.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I've said this multiple times to so many people, like you don't want to look back and be like, man, I'm glad that's over.
yeah.
This
Yeah.
is supposed
Yeah.
to be the best day of your life, and it's kind of where a planner comes into play to make sure that
I know
happens.
that you serve in service around the Fayetteville, Georgia
Mhm.
area.
Yeah,
Got to believe too, you maybe could consult, virtually as well. If,
sure,
somebody
absolutely.
feels connected to you. How do we find you?
You can reach me on email, which is ktharp, THARP, at greatdayseventplanning.com. My cell phone number is 304-203-2481. My website, www.greatdayseventplanning.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, where I give like some extra tips on wedding planning.
Awesome. You know your stuff. This is your purpose.
Thank
Wonderful having you on here today.
you. Yeah, same. Thank you so much.
And I'm flying down to Georgia because I want to see leaves on the trees. Like, I'm just looking
You
out your
really
window.
should. It is beautiful. I'm from West Virginia, so like this is not like West Virginia is like peak to me. And if you ever want to see like beautiful, beautiful foliage, like you need to go to West
Wow.
Virginia.
And
100%.
warmer
But this is
weather.
nice.
And
Yeah,
warmer
and warmer
weather.
weather.
Yeah. I mean, here it's 71 here in New York, in 2 days. It'll be 52 and 38 at night. So enjoy, like anything, enjoy it when you got it. And
Yeah.
enjoy talking with you. We'll catch up next
Woo.
time.
Sounds great.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.